figured out how to do it. Wonderful. Okay, so good morning, everyone. My name is Jody. I'm an Adult Services Associate here at Addison Public Library. I'm actually not in the library today, as you may have guessed, but I am so pleased to be here for a morning program. I just finished chair yoga, which we do every Thursday at 10 a.m. live on YouTube. You can always check those recordings after the fact, and you could spend all day doing chair yoga at this point. We've got so many. I'm so pleased and proud to have this program today. I checked in with College of Dupage Speakers Bureau, and I was introduced to Sandy Kurby, and she's going to tell us more about herself and what she does. What I like to call her is a triple header. She's got 3 things going for her professional profile, and they're all very impressive and helpful to the community. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Sandy. Everybody pick up the program guide when you can. It's still in effect through the end of the month. And we've got, certainly a couple more things coming up. My big one next week is Caribbean Foods Excursions with chef and teacher Roberto Perez, which we're going to make amazing, healthy food. He's a really cool educator from an organization called Urban Pilon. That's my plugs. And so anyways, Kathy or Sandy, I'm so glad you're here. And I'm just going to duck out and let you do your thing. Anybody who has a question at the end, you can unmute and ask anything you need. We're here for you, and I'm here for you in the chat as well.
All right. Great to be here. It sounds like a really exciting program next time with the Caribbean food. I am Sandy Kurby. I have my master's degree of public health. I'm a registered and licensed dietitian nutritionist. I do work at College of Dupage. I have a lot of other little side jobs as well. I'm a group fitness instructor, personal trainer, and do some nutrition counseling as well as teaching. So today I'm going to be talking to you guys about adult nutrition for longevity and mental clarity. It's really quite a broad topic, so I tried to bring things down as best I could. I do have a handout that I know Jody has provided you, but I also have the resources on here as well. So as we move along, we can take a look and see where I'm getting some of this information from and how to make sense of it all. So the first thing to kind of go over is the dietary guidelines that we have for 2020 to 2025. So every 5 years, we have a new set of dietary guidelines, and it's just for the standard American diet. They're general recommendations and guidelines that are given to again, the general public. So we're going to take a look at those and then kind of modify them and see how it would work for somebody more in the population of, they do have a larger population span. So we have 30 to 59 and then 60 plus. So I'm going to be taking it from that 30 onward grouping and see what our recommendations would be for people in those areas. On your handouts, you will see that we do have the recommendations for those that might be younger as well. So a little something to kind of take a look at. But the main dietary guidelines that were revised and came out actually earlier this year are to follow a healthy dietary pattern at every life stage. So again, we're going to focus on adult. So 30 plus is pretty much where we're looking at today. Customize and enjoy nutrient-dense food and beverage choices to reflect personal preferences, cultural traditions, and budgetary considerations. With this, I always like to allow for modifications in people's diets. A lot of times people will go to a dietitian and say, like, give me a nutrition plan, or what should I be eating? It's really hard to tell somebody this is exactly what you should be eating. If you have somebody who, is diabetic or something like that, and they need to have so many carbohydrates that they need to stay within, that's a different story. That's, something that's a little bit more medically oriented. Whereas if we have somebody just coming and they're like, I just want to eat healthy and lose weight, so what should I be eating? Well, it's going to vary depending on your own preferences. If I were to tell you you should have 2 servings of fish each week because you need your omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids, but you hate fish, it's really not going to be helpful. Or if I tell you that you need to have broccoli every day and that's like the one vegetable you hate, it's not going to be helpful. So kind of taking in food preferences, maybe cultural traditions, if there's some sort of food that you enjoy regularly or is a part of your background, that's always something to think about. Budgetary considerations, especially during COVID times, what do we have access to? I know grocery store prices have been going up a little bit. Access to getting fast food versus restaurant dining, things like that can all make a big difference in terms of what we're eating and what we have access to. And then also focusing on meeting each food group need. So we're going to look at the different food groups, and years ago we used to have just the 4 basic food groups. Then things changed and it went to the food guide pyramid, if you remember that. And then now we have Choose My Plate, which has been around for several years now, but some people still aren't very familiar with it. And it is, again, very broad spectrum. So we're going to take a look at the nutrition needs for, again, an adult and what that means in terms of the Choose My Plate. So we'll take a look at that in a little bit as well. But looking at the different types of foods, how we can get the most for our nutrition bang for our buck, and certain beverages, what to stay away from, what maybe we should limit a little bit more so that we can stay within our calorie limits. The fourth dietary guideline is going to be to limit foods and beverages that are going to be higher in sugar, saturated fat, and sodium, and then also limit our alcoholic beverages. So all of this is going to be on a nice little handout that you guys have. I will be kind of referencing this a little bit as we go along, but the 4 guidelines that we just talked about are right here in the center. So again, you can kind of take a look at that. When we look at our sodium levels and things like that, we can take a look at the Choose My Plate and kind of define things a little bit more in terms of adding more potassium if we do have a naturally higher sodium diet, or taking a look at adding our fruits and vegetables and whole grains and adding some fiber in so we can help reduce cholesterol and stay away from some of that saturated fat. Limit the alcoholic beverages. The recommendation right now is no more than 1 alcoholic beverage for females and 2 for males per day. That also means that you can't save them up for the weekend or anything like that. So that is the current recommendation for that as well. And then the next thing to kind of take a look at is, going out of order, is number 3 here. How do we make every bite count? So the USDA has come up with these dietary guidelines for 2020 to 2025. And really the main part of it is to look and see how we can make every bite count in terms of the most nutrient dense or highest quality foods that we can get, and get, again, the best nutrition that we can in terms of what we're eating. Because if we look at the very bottom here, where it says currently, unfortunately, we have 75% of people have dietary patterns that are low in fruits, vegetables, and dairy. Fruits and vegetables are going to be some of the best things that we can add in. That's where we're getting all of our fruit, or all of our vitamins and minerals. We're getting a lot of our fiber, usually very low fat, if not no fat in our fruits and vegetables. It just depends on how we're preparing them. We do have some fat in avocado, but it's going to be our good fat, our healthy fat. And then we do have some fat in coconut, but most people don't sit and just eat straight up coconut. So I usually don't worry about that too much. But other than that, it's all fat free, and it's all a lot of great fiber that can help us, again, reduce cholesterol, keep us feeling full and satiated a little bit longer, and definitely provide those vitamins and minerals that we need. So we might not need to take a supplement or anything like that. 63% exceed the limit for added sugars. So in taking a look at the foods that we are eating day to day, are they fresh foods? Are they canned? Are they, frozen? Frozen isn't going to be as bad as we might see something preserved in terms of canned. When something is canned or even boxed foods, we have a lot of preservatives in them, and that gives us an extra amount of salt and sugar. Those are going to be our 2 biggest preservatives that are used when we're looking at anything that's going to be packaged. 77% exceed the limit for saturated fat. That's, one that's kind of easy to do when we take a look at all of the different sweets and goodies that we can add into our diet, on top of adding some extra fats in. If we start looking at some of our fad diets even, looking at people that might be on a keto diet or a paleo diet, things like that. Sometimes adding extra fats are something that those types of diets don't think are necessarily a bad thing. But again, looking at saturated versus unsaturated fats is going to be something that we want to take a little closer look at. And then 90% exceed the chronic disease risk reduction limits for sodium. So again, one of our main natural preservatives is going to be sodium. So when we have packaged foods, we see a lot of extra sodium thrown in there as well. So trying to have as many fresh fruits and vegetables as possible. And again, looking at those whole grains are going to be some of the main areas that we want to take a look at. So when we look over at, kind of going out of order again, number 2, we're going back to the top here. The foods and beverages we consume have a profound impact on our health, yet we're still not following a healthy dietary pattern. So what is a healthy dietary pattern? We're going to take a look at that a little bit in a minute here. So we're going to be focusing on ages 31 and up. So we're going 31 to 59, and I didn't want to just limit it there. So we're also looking at ages 60 plus. Those two, in terms of dietary recommendations, are pretty close. Sometimes we'll see a half cup difference in some of our foods there. The only other thing that I wanted to direct everybody's attention to was this little arrow at the bottom here, keeping things current and timely. People living with diet-related chronic conditions and diseases are at an increased risk for severe illness from COVID-19. So as we are, continuing to battle this pandemic, something to really keep in mind is our immunity and things that we can do in order to stay healthy as best we can, so that we can fight some of these chronic illnesses. And if something happens, unfortunately, where we do get COVID-19, hopefully we'd be able to respond to it a little bit easier if we don't have some of those chronic diseases or illnesses. So eating for success, a lot of times will come down to looking at Choose My Plate. So Choose My Plate or myplate.gov is a great resource to take a look at. It's going to kind of help us see how we can accomplish our goals of what we should eat and how much we should eat. So when you take a look at it, right away, it's like, all right, we used to have the food guide pyramid that would have, the very bottom was grains, and it would say 6 to 10 or 6 to 11 servings, and people would be like, 6 servings or 11 servings, where am I supposed to be at? And then the tip of the pyramid was fats, oils, and sweets, and it would just say use sparingly. Nobody really knew what that meant. So we switched over to Choose My Plate. When you look at Choose My Plate, there are no set recommendations on here because they are very broad recommendations depending on what age group you're in. So again, we're going to focus on that 31 and above. And again, there's not a whole lot of difference between those two. There's going to be some differences between male versus female, and we'll kind of go along as we're going along. We'll take a look at some of those differences. So when we look at Choose My Plate, the one thing that should pop out first is that half the plate is fruits and vegetables. Now, when I take a look at the plate too, I always think, all right, half the plate fruits and vegetables. Am I going to be eating, a quarter of my plate vegetables for breakfast? Traditionally, not something that I would normally do. If, I was maybe having an omelet or something, maybe I would make it more of a veggie omelet and I could hit those vegetables. But traditionally, I'm not one to have vegetables for breakfast, just the way I was raised and the way that my personal preferences are. So not everybody's going to hit every single thing at their, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack, whatever it may be. Again, this is just a guideline and a recommendation. So trying to make all foods fit and trying to just take a look at what your plate would look like if you put all your foods together for the day and put it on one plate, where would things, wind up? So if we can make half of our meals or half of our plate fruits and vegetables, all the better. Again, that's going to be where we have very low fat, if not no fat, depending again on how things are being prepared. We have a lot of fiber that's going to help with, again, cholesterol, reducing our feeling of being hungry, helping us to fight some of our diseases. So, and vitamins and minerals. So fruits and vegetables are going to be one of the main things we want to look at. I'm going to jump onto myplate.gov, which again, you can always jump back and take a look here as well. But this is a great resource that will give you a lot of the information that I'm going to be presenting to you about MyPlate. So you can go through the different tabs and take a look, but if you just go to the home page and scroll down a little bit, you can take the quiz and see kind of where you stand. But you have the My Plate, and then you have each of the food groups for My Plate, and you can click on each one. And I'm not going to sit here and read all this to you because I can let you take a look at things as well. But it'll tell you exactly how much fruit you would need depending on your age and if you're male or female. It'll also give you some serving sizes and things like that. So you can take a look at that through each of the food groups. So when we take a look at, I'm gonna jump out of here, but again, great resource to come to. So whoops, I'm gonna go back there. I got a little click happy. So when you look at Choose My Plate, and if you look back at this, you can always go to this website and you can get an idea of what your serving sizes should be for the entire day. So what they're going to do on Choose My Plate is give you recommendations of, for fruit, for men and women, we have 1.5 to 2 cups per day. So 1.5 to 2 cups, what exactly does that mean? We're going to look at portion sizes a little bit more closely in just a second. Your vegetables, we have 2 to 3.5 cups. So men are going to be on the higher end, women are usually going to be on the lower end. Again, these are all recommendations, so it's going to vary depending on your height, your weight, where you are currently with your diet. So if you're saying to yourself, if I'm lucky, I'll have, maybe a handful of grapes a day, or maybe every other day I'll have a vegetable. Like I'm just not a big vegetable person. Taking a look at where you are now and building from there, starting slowly. So if you are somebody that, if you take a look at your day and you only have maybe 1 fruit and vegetable in a day, let's say I only have, again, that handful of grapes in the morning, and that's pretty much it for fruits and vegetables for me. I really don't like them. I don't eat them that much. Now, maybe that's something to kind of take a look at. And, maybe for the next week or so, my goal is to have at least 1.5 servings or 2 servings per day, every single day. I'm not going to say every day I'm adding on more and more, but go for a week and then see, all right, what's working, what's not working. And now maybe I can switch my goal up a little bit, add a little bit more, or see maybe what has happened that kind of stopped me from achieving that goal. So taking a look at where your recommendations are, but not saying that by tomorrow I have to be there right away. Same thing goes for our whole grains. So again, fruits and vegetables and whole grains, those are going to be the areas where we get a lot of our fiber. Fiber is fantastic for the body. I tell people a lot of times it's almost like your body's Drano, because it can help take some of that cholesterol right out of the system, depending on if you're looking at soluble or insoluble fiber. But it also helps you feel fuller longer. With that, you need to increase your consumption of water anytime you're adding more fiber. So you never want to jump in and be like, all right, I'm supposed to have 25 to 35 grams of fiber a day. Right now I have maybe 10, which is, I think the average American is about 15 grams of fiber. So most people are not anywhere near where they should be in terms of their fiber content. But it doesn't mean that tomorrow I'm going to hit 35 grams right away and every day. You're probably not going to feel very good. You're probably going to feel very bloated. You may even have the absolute reverse effects of what we want from fiber, where you'll feel constipated, you'll feel sluggish, and almost like you have a rock sitting in your stomach. So gradually increasing some of these areas like fruits and vegetables and our whole grains until we meet the recommendations is going to be what we're looking at. When we're adding some of these foods, though, at the same time, some people will think, well, I can't have, 2 cups of fruits and vegetables every day because I'm not going to be hungry for, some of the other stuff that I might need. So now looking at protein a little bit, protein, we only need 5 to 7 ounces for those that are, again, 31 and older. So more than half of the population actually meets or exceeds their current protein recommendations. So again, going back to fad diets and things like that, there's so much information and a big push for people to have more protein. But a lot of people already are meeting those protein needs. So really focusing on our whole grains and our fruits and vegetables, kind of thinking things plant forward is definitely going to be a little bit better and healthier for us. I'm not saying that there might not be some people that do need to increase their protein, but in general, most Americans are meeting or exceeding their protein requirements already. So our protein requirements are 5 to 7 ounces per day. So again, we're going to take a look at exactly what this looks like or what it would mean in terms of each meal. Moving from there real quickly, we have dairy. I know some people might be lactose intolerant. Maybe they aren't necessarily interested in having milk, cow's milk and that sort of thing. There are a lot of different options out there now as well. Right now, the recommendation is 3 cups per day for dairy. So again, we'll take a look at what all of this means in terms of portions in just a second here. So we're going to start on the right side, and we'll stick with like we did with the whole choose my plate. So vegetables and fruit. Again, our serving sizes are 1.5 to 2 cups for fruits, and then 2 to 3.5 cups for vegetables. So what we are looking at in terms of what a serving size actually is, 1 cup of salad greens is going to be, if you think of, salad kind of taking up a little bit more space if you were to put it in a bowl, as opposed to like a chopped up vegetable or something like that. We have 1 cup being about the size of a baseball. And then if we look at any of our other fruits and vegetables, we're looking at a 1/2 cup as our serving size. So that would be about the size of half of your baseball. A potato, yes, it is a starchy vegetable, but it is still considered one of our vegetables. So we will continue to keep it in our fruits and vegetables category and not our grains. It does have a lot of starch to it. But again, especially if you keep your skins on, that's going to be where we get a lot of our fiber, vitamins, and minerals. So if you can eat those skins, there was a time that I had a client that was like, I am keeping the skins on the potato. I just don't understand why I'm doing that. She was eating the potato, a baked potato, but she wasn't eating the skin, even though she left the skin on. She was just scraping until she got to the bottom and still not eating that. So eating your skins, like your potato skins, an apple, not peeling an apple to get the skin off, that's going to be where we get a lot of our fiber from. So if you can, not just leave it on, but also eat that part of it is going to be where we're going to get the most bang for our buck there. If we look at our potato, though, since it is a starchier vegetable, about the size of a fist, or again, close to the size of a baseball. I don't always like saying something like a fist because that can kind of, everybody's fist is going to be different. If I looked at mine versus somebody else's, it can be quite different. So again, about the size of a baseball, but again, it might be a little bit of a different shape to it. So just kind of keeping that in mind as something that we can think of as, if we're at the grocery store and thinking, all right, how big, of a potato should I be getting? About the size of your fist is a good place to start. Or if you can visualize a baseball and what that might look like in terms of your potato, that would be a great object to kind of keep in mind. For our fruits, 1/2 cup is going to be your serving size for our other vegetables as well, again, outside of our salad greens. So 1/2 cup is about the half size of a baseball. The only other thing that we're going to kind of take out of that equation is going to be our banana. A banana, 1/2 of a banana is going to be considered 1 serving. So that would be the equivalent of having 1/2 cup of your fresh fruit there. Again, that's going to be one of our starchier fruits. So that's kind of why we're looking at that way. When we look at dried fruits, a 1/4 cup is going to be the serving size that we're looking at. So if we're looking at raisins, for example, on here, a 1/4 cup is going to be about the size of a large egg. So some people will say, as much as you can put in the palm of your hand, but some people will take a big heaping, palm full. And again, everybody's palms are going to be a little bit different in size. But again, it gives you a little bit of an idea of what that might look like. So 1/4 cup is going to be your dried fruit. Going back to looking at calories, looking at added sugars, things like that, if we can stick with our fresh fruits and vegetables, that's going to be best. If we can stay away from anything that might be canned, again, our preservatives, one of the main ones is going to be salt or sodium. So that's going to be added in to help things stay preserved in that canned manner. In terms of fruits, if we're looking at dried fruits, a lot of times there's that extra sugar added to it. If you're looking at some of our dried fruits like banana chips and things like that, sometimes there's a lot of saturated fat added to that as well because it's going to be fried. So trying to keep things as fresh as possible. When we're in winter months and you don't have access to some of those great fruits and vegetables, frozen is going to be your next best option. So again, looking at fruits, if we're looking at canned fruits, again, one of your additives is going to be sugar. So trying to stay away from sugar if you're, or I'm sorry, staying away from canned fruits as well, if you can. If you are going to be having either a canned vegetable or a canned fruit of some sort or a packaged fruit, if you can rinse everything off before eating it, that can get rid of at least some of those juices that are, in that liquid that has the extra sodium or extra sugar, along with that. So if you can get that off, yes, there is going to be some extra in the fruit or vegetable itself, but at least you can eliminate what you can there. Looking over at our grain products, for our grains, we have 5 to 9 ounce equivalents. So when we look at what our ounces would be, or how many cups we would like to have, 1 cup, again, is going to be about the size of a fist. Again, better is to look at the baseball. If you're looking at a pancake, a lot of these are going to be, different sizes when we are taking a look at our grains, about the size of a compact disc or a CD. If you're looking at cooked pasta, rice, things of that nature, we have a 1/2 cup that we're looking at. So when we're looking at something that might be a 1/2 cup, it's not to say that, all right, I'm having pasta for dinner and we maybe went out to eat Maggiano's or something like that, and now you have a platter of pasta sitting in front of you. You're definitely not going to be eating that 1/2 cup. Maybe you're having 3 cups. Now I know I have 6 servings in front of me here. If I'm eating all of that, I've had 6 servings of my grains. I'm not saying that, you have to stick to only a 1/2 cup at each meal, because that definitely wouldn't get us to our 5 to 9 ounce equivalents. But if you had all 6 at one meal, great. We're going to talk a little bit about food journaling. Now you'll know that, all right, I only have, maybe 1 or 2 other equivalents that I can use for a different part of the day. When we're looking at sliced bread or bread in general, about the size of a cassette tape is going to be our serving. Most standard slices of bread will be a good serving size. Some of them, as we look at, dining out, even portions are just getting bigger and bigger. So when we look at things like bagels, a bagel you want to see like hit over the size of a standard coffee cup, and only 1/2 of that is going to be considered your serving, your 1 ounce serving. So keeping that in mind as well. Piece of cornbread, I don't know why this one is up here, but a piece of cornbread is going to be about the size of a bar of soap. So, keeping in mind that you can't have like half your loaf or anything like that, but just keeping those serving sizes in mind. Moving down to our meats or our protein area. So our protein, again, 5 to 7 ounces is going to be our recommendation. So if you were to divide that up between 2 meals, let's say, and again, females are going to be on the lower end, males are going to be on the higher end, depending on height and things like that as well. But 3 ounces of meat, fish, and poultry are going to be about the size of a deck of cards. A lot of times you may have heard people say the size of the palm of your hand. Again, kind of going with what you can, where you are. So, everybody's palm is going to be a little bit different in size, but at the same time, if I look at my palm, and if I were to look at my husband's palm, who he's, 6'2" and I'm only 5'2", his palm's going to be a lot bigger, but his needs are also going to be a little bit more as well. So if he has an extra ounce in there, that's okay. So if I'm thinking of those 3 ounce servings and I don't have a deck of cards, or I can't quite relate to what that might look like, palm of your hand is going to be fine. If we're looking at things like grilled fish, or a protein that might be a little bit longer and thinner, about the size of a checkbook is going to be a good thing to kind of keep in mind as your object of what 3 ounces would look like. So those are going to be our 3 ounce portion sizes. If we're looking at beans and things like that, again, we can kind of take a look at 1/2 cup servings. So you can go back up to your grains and fruits and vegetables and take a look at your baseball and what that would look like as well. Other things that we might take a look at would be peanut butter, some of our flax seeds, things like that, that we might have, some of our nuts. Those are going to be 2 tablespoons is going to be our serving size for those. So again, you could say what you'd fit in the palm of your hand. Everybody's going to have a different kind of grab on that as well. So about the size of a ping pong ball when we're looking at peanut butter. And if you wanted to, with all of this, I always tell people, pour it, or, you know, take it out like you're going to make your peanut butter and jelly sandwich, you know, put it on the spoon. This is usually my grab that I get, and then put it in a measuring spoon and see how much you have. Maybe you have 3 tablespoons. That's fine. Now you know you have more than, you know, that serving size. So now you can kind of do a little tally system and take that away, and then you know you only have, you know, 1.5 servings for later on, whatever it may be. Same thing goes back to when we were talking about grains. The main one example that I use there is like your cereal in the morning. If you don't know, you know, what your normal portion size is, I tell people, take out your bowl that you would normally have your cereal in, pour your cereal, and then before you take your milk out and dump your milk into your cereal bowl, take that bowl of cereal and dump it into a measuring cup. Then you can see how much you have. So let's say I have, you know, 2 cups of cereal every morning. That's fine. I mean, I have 2 servings down. That's perfectly fine. It's not to say that I have to limit myself to that one cup and that's it. Like if you ever went, you know, on vacation or got those little cereal boxes that are, you know, really small, and sometimes they're 3/4 of a cup, sometimes they're half cup. If you looked at those and you're like, there's no way I'm going to eat just that, I'm going to have 2, maybe even 3 of those for my normal, you know, amount. That, again, that's fine. Now you know that that's how much you're taking in, and then you know for the rest of your day, you know, maybe you're not going to have an extra grain with your dinner meal. Maybe you're, you know, going to stay away from the French bread or something like that that you would have normally had with your dinner meal because you had a, you know, bigger grain serving size in the morning. So again, kind of taking a look at your whole day, not limiting yourself just because a portion size says this is exactly what that is. Moving into dairy, cheese, again, we have so many dairy alternatives that you can take a look at now as well. So we can kind of swap different things in and out depending on if we're looking at, you know, cashew milk or almond milk versus cow's milk. Same thing with our cheeses. You can swap those out for soy cheeses and things like that. But 1.5 ounces of cheese is going to be the equivalent, I kind of laugh at this, of 4 stacked dice or 2 cheese slices. So if you're doing like a sliced cheese, 2 slices together would be considered 1 serving. 4 stacked dices is about the same as 2 dominoes, if you're familiar with the size of dominoes. So I think that's a little bit easier for me to think about instead of stacking 4 dice and seeing what that looks like. If we're looking at ice cream, this is one where things are changing a little bit. We have new food labels coming in. So our portion sizes are going to be looking a little bit different soon in terms of what it says on the food label. But right now, 1/2 cup of ice cream is going to be about the size of 1/2 of a baseball. Soon that's going to be 1 cup. So it'll give us a little bit more. But again, with the changes to the food labels, really what they're saying is what they have on that product is exactly what you're getting or what you're going to be consuming. So if you were to look at, for example, a bag of chips, like you know, a personal bag of chips, and you normally would eat that whole little thing, the little Lay's, whatever it is. Sometimes if you look at the side of it or the back of it for the food label, it'll say that there's 2 servings in there or 3 servings in there. Now it's going to be 1 serving. So you know what you're getting and what it says is exactly what's in there. So kind of a nice switch with that. And again, one of those things is going to be ice cream that kind of changes to our benefit. And then for our fats, we have 1 teaspoon is going to be considered 1 dye. So if you were to take your 4 stacked dice from before and just take 1 of those, that's going to be about the size that you would have for your margarine or your butter or your added fats. So even if you're looking at salad dressings, things like that, those are going to be taking a look at, again, your tablespoons for that, about the size of your ping pong ball. I know there's a lot of information on that, but again, just trying not to dwell too much on one particular area and taking a look at your whole diet overall is going to be helpful. So some of our tips for a healthy plate in general is not to skip meals. I know there's a lot about intermittent fasting or skipping meals in particular, trying to make all foods count and trying to realize that the foods that we put in our body are going to be helpful for us to keep our energy levels up throughout the day. So if there ever is a time that you are going to maybe take a look at intermittent fasting or something like that, instead take a look at your portion sizes and see how much you're eating at each meal. Because a lot of times when I've seen people who say that they want to start intermittent fasting or something like that, and I'm not saying that it doesn't work for some people, because it definitely does, but for others, there can be a lot of hormonal issues, especially as we're aging. There can be blood glucose shifts as well, where some people definitely do need to have some sort of snack at night that has some protein and some carbohydrate mix to it so that they have stable blood sugar throughout the night. So each person is going to be individualized in terms of some of these types of recommendations that we hear in terms of especially fad diets. So trying not to skip meals as much as possible, but taking a look at your portion sizes and just seeing what you're doing throughout the day, and knowing that if, let's say it's somebody's birthday or something like that, and you have a piece of cake and maybe you overindulged on something, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean that tomorrow you're going to step on the scale and it's going to be 5 pounds heavier or something like that. Sometimes you do see that a little bit because maybe we had a little bit more sodium and you're really just retaining water. But what we do day in and day out is going to be more important than what happens at one meal or one specific day. So what we're doing over time is going to be what's more important. As we are in the pandemic, it is easier to eat at home than it is to eat out. So I think that is one thing that may have helped a lot of people. But at the same time, fast food is a quick and easy option for a lot of people. So I think a lot of people have relied on that or on comfort foods. So kind of trying to shift our mentality and working from the ground up all over again, and trying to take foods at home and make foods at home as much as possible. As you are able to head out, whether it's going back to work or just going out for the day, trying to pack your own lunch or at least plan ahead of time. So if you, as things are opening up, if you are able to meet somebody, we'll talk about this in a second, but restaurant style dining, taking a look at the options before you actually get to the restaurant, or maybe being the one to offer, like, let's go to this place because you already know what some of your healthier options might be. Again, looking at portion sizes, paying attention to non-hunger cues. This is a big one. A lot of times what we do in terms of nutrition isn't necessarily just about the food. A lot of times it's social. More often than not, it's social, which is, again, kind of been hard during this past year. A lot of it is mental or psychological, and some of it is just habitual. So maybe there's a certain, Thursday night TV show that you really enjoy and you watch with somebody, and, it means that that's the night that you sit and have, ice cream together, or you have a big meal that you had, ordered out every Thursday because that's your time together, or that's what you're doing. So starting to pay attention to non-hunger cues. Boredom is definitely one of those that, when we start getting bored, we start just picking at different foods. Maybe you're the person that cooks in your house, and as you're cooking dinner, you're sampling things. So by the time it gets to dinner time, you're really not hungry, but now you've made this for everybody and you have to sit down and eat with them anyway. So now you're eating more. So just paying attention to some of the things that you're doing day in and day out can definitely be helpful. And then again, watching those alcoholic beverages. I know I mentioned before, the recommendation is 1 for females and no more than 2 alcoholic beverages per day for males. And again, not piling those up together for the weekend or anything like that, but trying to maintain as moderate as possible. If you do end up heading out for fast food, try and make your meals as well balanced as possible. I know there are a lot of options out there now that claim to be healthier. If you can look at, and the great thing is now we have our calories that are showing on menus, so you can make a little bit of a better decision based on that. Looking for smaller portions instead of going for, the extra value or whatever it may be. Looking at sauces and extra things that are being added to our entrees. So if you have, a burger or something like that, and it has some sort of special sauce or something that you don't know exactly what those ingredients are, most likely it's going to be a lot of extra added fat. one place that I usually like to jump in when we get to the salad bar portion is be wise with your salad bars. So any of those little crunchy things that you put on top, not necessarily just croutons, but croutons, like any wonton bites or, you know, anything that might be crunchy, or if you ever see on a menu something that says crispy, extra crispy, crunchy, a lot of times that means it's going to be deep fried, and sometimes double deep fried. So kind of paying attention to those extra things that are going into your salads as well. And thinking just because it's a salad doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be healthy. So if you can, try and get your dressings to the side, and then, you know, working with knowing what you have in front of you, trying not to take your fork and picking up your lettuce and then dunking it into your dressing now. But instead, I usually tell people to take your fork, dip it into the dressing, and then pick up your lettuce, because now you just have a little drizzle of that dressing on your salad instead of having copious amounts of dressing in your salad. So if you can, try and be mindful of that. Baked potatoes and salads, trying to keep things like that together. Watching for, if we're looking at breakfast, high fat breakfast items. Again, saturated fat is going to be one of the things that we take a look at with that. Again, there's so much information. I can kind of do probably a whole other presentation just on dining out in itself. But when we're looking at saturated fat and some of our high fat breakfast items, my mind goes directly to donuts, croissants, things like that. I usually tell people, if you have something and you're not sure if it's a saturated fat, put it on a napkin, or maybe you know, went to the donut shop and you got a donut and they put it in a bag with a napkin, and then you get home and you pull out the napkin and you see it's kind of got like a, almost like a little sheen to it. Or if you had something sitting on, you know, your donut sitting on a napkin at home, and then you go to pick it up to eat it and you see that you can almost, you know, pick up the napkin and see through it. That's going to mean that that's the saturated fat that is coming out of that food. So that's how you know that you have something that is going to be saturated fat. We can talk about trans fats and how those are similar to saturated fats as well at another time, but saturated and trans fats are two that you kind of want to stay away from as much as possible. And then looking for less sugar and calories, we're going to try and restrict some of our milkshakes, pies, sundaes, syrups, and sweet sauces. So that one's kind of a no-brainer, but, and it's not to say that you can never have any of these, just not making it a part of your daily diet, but saving those for special times. Restaurant dining, again, shop carefully for your restaurant if you can. Again, be the one that tells people where you want to go, because then you have a chance to kind of take a look at the menu. A lot of menus now are online, so you can take a look and see what the selections are and kind of have a game plan. So if you know you're going out for dinner tomorrow night, Friday night, now I can set up my day to not necessarily starve myself all day, but to know that, all right, if I'm going to this place and I know I'm going to indulge in a pasta dish, maybe for breakfast and lunch, I'm going to try and be a little bit more forward with my fruits and vegetables. So trying to make sure that we're balancing things as best we can. Order wisely. So again, just making sure that you're reading through everything and knowing what you're going to be getting. And I always tell people, don't be shy, especially when it's restaurant dining. You can request smaller portions. You can request to not have the bread brought to the table or the chips brought to the table. If you are with other people and you're like, well, I'm not going to be that person that says I don't want that. See if you can have it at the opposite end of the table. So if you were going to get it, you'd have to reach over everybody, and you don't want to do that. So you're going to, you know, stay to your side of the table, and you can keep that added extra on the other side of the table. Substitute things whenever you can. It could be something as simple as the vegetable of the day that they have instead of the French fries. Again, we talked about adding the dressing on the side instead of having it on your salad if you're doing a salad. And then always ask how food is prepared, especially if it's a sit down, a nice, you know, sit down restaurant. Your waiter or waitress is usually pretty excited to talk about how the food is prepared, and they're very knowledgeable. They usually, before their shift, you know, have an idea of how things are prepared, because of people might have special dietary considerations or allergies or whatever it may be. But don't hesitate to ask how things are made, and if you can get something that's baked or grilled versus something that's going to be fried, all the better. So kind of knowing is half the battle with that. And then kind of pulling things together, one of the best things that I can tell people is to food journal. And as soon as I say that, there's always some people that, roll their eyes, or they're like, there's no way this is going to happen. It doesn't necessarily have to be pen and paper writing everything out. A lot of times I'll tell people to use a tally system or focus on just certain areas. Let's say again that I'm that person who maybe only gets one fruit and vegetable in a day. Maybe that's going to be my goal. So my food journal is going to be just tallying how many fruits and vegetables I'm having in my day. And my goal, I know right now I have one fruit and vegetable total in a day. So the next week, I'm going to try and make that 2 every day for the next week. And then I'm going to reevaluate. So in my planner or wherever it may be, even on my phone in the notes section, I'm just going to tally and, put when I'm having my fruit and vegetable. Definitely the more information you can put in a food journal, the better. So if I could put, a tally that I had a fruit at breakfast, and then, I look after the end of the week and I see I'm always having a fruit at breakfast, and now I'm trying to add something else in. Well, maybe I can add a vegetable at my dinner time meal, or maybe I can add half of a fruit at my lunchtime, or a snack or something like that. So now you can kind of get an idea of what your current habits are and where you can kind of tweak things a little bit that way. So that's going to be one way. Writing things out is another way for sure. And there's also apps that you can use on your phone that you can input the food itself. And MyFitnessPal is one that I use a lot with a lot of clients. And it's one that you can go to different restaurants and enter in that exact food item, and you'll know exactly how many calories, protein, carbohydrates, fats, all of your macronutrients and a lot of your micronutrients. You'll know what you're getting from there. But the main thing with food journaling, whether you're doing a tally system, whether you're writing everything out, whether you're using an app, the biggest part of it is accountability. As soon as I decide that I'm going to take a closer look at what I'm doing, I'm holding myself accountable. So now I know every day, all right, I'm keeping track of how many fruits and vegetables I'm taking in a day. And now I know I have this goal in the forefront of my mind, and I know I want to, try and make this goal. So I'm going to constantly be doing that. Or maybe I get to a decision of, dessert. Everybody's going out for dessert and getting ice cream. Maybe I'm going to choose to have a frozen banana instead. I'm getting my fruit in. I'm still getting, something sweet. I'm still getting, the chocolate on there as well. But hey, I just got 2 servings because again, your banana, half of it is 1 serving. I just got 2 servings of fruit, win, and dessert. Can't go wrong with that. So again, it's giving you that accountability. Or it could also, have you look and see, all right, it's 9 o'clock at night and I want to have a snack and I haven't had a fruit or a vegetable today. Maybe this is the time to have, peanut butter and apple or something like that. So I know that I'm going to have my fruit coming in for the day. So it's not necessarily just for a dietitian or somebody else to take a look at and analyze, every micronutrient or anything like that. Sometimes it's just for you to see what you're doing, because a lot of what we do is habitual. A lot of what we do is just our day in and day out, things that we can change on our own. So you can kind of pick up on that. Some of the things to take a look at when we are food journaling, again, the more information, the better. But if you're somebody who, isn't really big on food journaling, start off with, again, just that tally system, or start off with something smaller, and then you can always build from there. There's always room to add notes. Even in some of the apps, there's a note section. But if you have more information, the more you'll learn about your own personal eating habits, and again, the psychology behind them. Was I in a good mood or a bad mood? Things like that. So at the bare minimum, basics would be the foods that you're eating or your specific goal, if you're just tallying the one goal. So you can just do one thing. Again, you can use a notebook or a sheet of paper, an app on your phone, the note section on your phone. I find that ends up being a little bit easier because most people are carrying their phones with them. And again, keep it with you. Try not to wait until the end of the day. If I waited till the end of the day, sometimes I wouldn't remember what I had for breakfast anyways. So if you can, do it as soon as you're eating. That way okay, now for lunch, I'm going to kind of change what I thought I was going to have to, X, Y, or Z. Along with that, meal planning and prepping. Again, that's a whole other area we can get into, but it's extremely beneficial to know what you're going to have at different times of the day. So even if you're only meal prepping or meal planning, you know, for your lunches every day or just your breakfast every day, you already have that one thing that you don't have to worry about in terms of where you're getting certain things for your nutrition from. So if you can, the more, again, information, the better. The day, the time, you know, if I'm eating, you know, something for breakfast, is it before I'm going for my walk outside or is it after? What is the food itself? The amount, again, pour, then measure. So dump it into your cereal bowl, then dump that cereal into a measuring cup so you can see exactly what you're getting. What else are you doing? Are you on the phone? Sometimes, you know, I'll be, you know, stressed out and my mom will call me or, you know, whoever it may be. And, you know, I reach for crunchy foods when I'm stressed and, you know, maybe it's not the best foods and I'm mindlessly eating because, you know, I'm not really paying attention to what I'm eating. I'm paying attention to the conversation that's going on or whatever it may be. So what else are you doing? Are you watching TV? Are you with other people? And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing to be social with your eating, but just being aware of it. And that way you can limit yourself in terms of your portions. So I always say, don't ever eat directly out of a bag of chips. Always put it in a bowl, even if it means you're going back for seconds, thirds, fourths, fifths. You know that you have to get up and go and get that and dump more back in the bowl and then put it away. So maybe by that second or third time, you'll be like, all right, I've already come over here a couple of times. Maybe I should be done. Or maybe that's the time that you realize like, oh, I am kind of full. I don't really need it. But if I had that whole big bowl of popcorn in front of me, sure, I'd be going till I was done. So, you know, what else is going on at the time? Where are you? Are you seated at the dinner table with everybody or are you in front of the TV and not really thinking about what you're eating? And how do you feel? You know, are you eating out of, you know, more of an emotional basis or are you eating to get energy? Maybe how did you feel the day before with some of the foods that you ate. So going back and being able to look at your food journal, you can kind of see in terms of your moods, you know, maybe, you know, I ate something later at night and that didn't agree with me very well. So I was up most of the night, or maybe I didn't have enough protein towards the end of the day. I just had, you know, just chips or something like that that didn't have any protein with it towards the end of the day. So my blood sugar, you know, was kind of all over the place. And that's why I woke up a little bit groggy. So we can definitely learn a lot about our eating just from food journaling and looking back at what we might have. So it's a continuous commitment to your health and your habits when you're food journaling. You can look at your overall nutrition. Again, it's not just one meal, but it's the entire outlook. So just because, again, you have cake or you indulge and maybe have more than one alcoholic beverage a night or something like that, doesn't necessarily mean, you know, it's the end of the world. It's just something that you can look back on and continue from there and adjust your goals. So know that eating is not necessarily just about the food all the time. More often than not, it's not about the food. It's a lot more psychological than instinctual. So we want to start from the bottom and work our way up from there. So just kind of keeping that in mind and being able to vary things a little bit, you know, over time, you can definitely learn a lot from food journaling. And that is all that I have for today. I know that was a lot of information in a short amount of time. So if there are some questions, I'd love to try and filter them out a little bit.
That is a lot to take in. You know, it really is. And I think it does us best, like you said, to look at it in an overall picture and not micromanage yourself and be like, you know, yes, you can, no, you can't, in moderation. You
yes,
know, I love that. Okay, so I do have a few questions.
Sure.
I'm going to start at the top, and that is there minimum calories that you recommend? I know it will be different for different people and ages and genders, but say for senior citizens without who are not getting a lot of rigorous activity.
Sure.
Is there a minimum amount of calorie?
So one thing that you want to make sure is you never go below your resting metabolic rate. What's your resting metabolic rate? If you were to lay in bed, do absolutely nothing all day long. It's how many calories your body actually needs to function, to get your heart beating, to get your brain functioning, to, you know, utilize all of your muscles, everything. So if I were to lay in bed and do absolutely nothing, that number is going to be different for every single person. The more lean body mass you have, so the more muscle you have, the higher your resting metabolic rate is, meaning the more calories you're going to need, even when you're resting in bed doing absolutely nothing. So real important to make sure that you are exercising so that we do have that resting metabolic rate increasing or being a little bit higher. And also another reason why we don't want to starve ourselves, because once you starve yourself, I would say it's kind of like a bear going into hibernation. You start storing, you know, carbohydrates, proteins, fat, whatever, as fat, because your body doesn't know when it's going to eat again next. So let's say my personal needs were, my resting metabolic rate was 1,500 calories. But in general, you know, I'm adding exercise, I'm adding work, I'm adding, you know, just activities of daily living. So maybe my real calorie allotment is 2,200 calories, but I have this 1,500 calorie resting metabolic rate, and now I'm starting to starve myself. Over time, that's going to go down more and more. So it'll get down to maybe 1,200 calories because my body's saying, all right, I know how to, you know, sustain myself at this lower level now. So it's going to kind of bring things down a little bit. And so you want to make sure that you're making sure that that doesn't happen and you're continuing to eat enough calories. So again, starvation is not going to be the best thing to do, but making sure that we are balancing calories in versus calories out for weight gain and weight loss. Each person is going to be individualized in terms of how many calories they need. The USDA food labels, everything is based on a 2,000 calorie diet. That is going to be our standard, you know, calorie allotment that we would use. But again, depending on your height, your weight, as we get older, we don't need as many calories. But again, it's not going to be a drastic change down to, you know, I just turned 65, so now I have to cut 500 calories or anything like that. It's just a gradual over time. Those calories kind of go down a little bit.
Gotcha. How do you determine your resting metabolic rate?
So determining your resting metabolic rate is definitely tricky. It's something that you would have to do. There are some equations that you can use based on your height, your weight, your activity level, things like that. There's one called the Harris-Benedict equation, and you just take in all these different factors, and it gives you an idea of what your resting metabolic rate is. Some gyms or some clinical settings, you can have a machine where you kind of breathe into it and it'll tell you exactly what your resting metabolic rate would be there as well. Things can definitely alter that though, depending on if you've had caffeine, if you're taking any medications, things like that. So it is really tricky. So one of the best things to do is, again, to kind of go back to food journaling and stuff, take a look at where your diet is now, and then never should anybody go more than 1 to 2 pounds of weight loss per week. So if you think about that, there's 3,500 calories in a pound. So even if I were to take, you know, just 250 calories, which could be maybe like a snack or something like that, and take that off, you know, of each day, over 2 weeks, I have a pound that I've lost. Again, it can go the opposite way if we're looking at weight gain. Some people do have, you know, the need that they're trying to maintain weight or gain weight, same type of thing. All it is just adding a little snack here and there, and that can make a big difference as well. The main thing is making sure that they're nutrient dense, so that we are getting those vitamins and minerals and not just empty calories or taking away, something like that.
For sure. Can you work with a doctor to get your metabolic picture, snapshot, or a dietitian?
Yeah, definitely. Most dietitians would be able to come up with that. A doctor, if they aren't able to do that, like your general physician, they would definitely be able to recommend somebody that you can go to see. But most dietitians would be able to help you with that for sure.
Exactly. Great. Great. Okay. So next question is, what's the name of that app you use?
The app that I recommend is MyFitnessPal. It is, if you were to look at it on like an iPhone or whatever it is, it's a blue background and it has like a white outline of a person or a silhouette of a person. It looks like they're jumping in the air. But you can go on there and you can enter in all your foods, and there's even like a scanning feature in the top right corner where you could click on that. And if I was making, you know, spaghetti and I had the spaghetti sauce, I could take the jar of sauce and I just put the camera up to it and it'll pop all that information into the app. When you go in to register, it is free. There are other parts of the app if you want, you can upgrade and things like that. I have never, in over 10 years of using this app, I've never done the upgrade or asked anybody to use the upgrade, because you do get all of your macro and many of your micronutrients. But when you sign up, there's a username and password, and you can log all of your information. And when you do that, they'll ask you your height, your weight, your activity level. So they try and come up with a snapshot of what your calorie range should be. So kind of keeping that in mind. Again, you don't want to fall too far below like what your resting metabolic rate might be. So don't be so hooked on the numbers. Look at more of everything in a general sense.
Yes, yes. Okay, great, thank you, thank you. That sounds like a really amazing app, actually.
Yeah, it's really good.
Good to know. Okay, so another question, really good question is, what do you think about the Eat Right for Your Blood Type diet?
I could go on each of the diets in a different direction. Each person is going to be completely different. You know, for some people it might work just because their blood type and what the book is saying will work together. But I've also worked with clients who are like, I really want to do this blood type thing, and you know, according to the blood type diet, I should be vegan, and they hate any type of, you know, vegetable known to man, and all they like to eat is, you know, steak and potatoes and that sort of thing. So a lot of it is preferential in terms of, you know, what you like to eat in general, and not trying to shift your whole mindset, but instead of keeping everything as balanced as possible. So unfortunately, a lot of fad diets focus on either eliminating one food group or only emphasizing one food group. So trying to keep things as broad as possible and letting all foods fit is definitely going to be one of the best ways to go with that.
Okay, so let me see. I just put a link in. It was just the first site I Googled, and it's for your resting metabolic rate. It's like a BMI calculator, only it's for that. So I'm sure that if you guys do any kind of general Google search, you'll find something that gets you in the neighborhood of it. But I would also think your doctor is like, you know, the person.
Absolutely.
Everybody's just saying, you know, wonderful info in class, and thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, and now I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Are dairy substitutes dairy?
Yes.
Okay.
It's going to depend. A lot of them are going to give you a lot of the same types of things you would get from dairy. So they're not dairy in terms of it's not cow's milk or, you know, anything like that. But a lot of, like, if you were to look at like a cashew milk or an almond milk or something like that, a lot of times you'll see it has just as much, sometimes even more calcium than cow's milk would have. You can definitely get a similar amount of protein from both of them. Things are going to vary, you know, with everything. It'll vary depending on what type of like nut milk you might be using, or if it's a soy-based product or something like that. And then if you're looking at cow's milk in general, the main differences that we see are, you know, if you're doing a 2%, 1% skim milk, fat content is going to be your biggest differentiator there. So you can go from, you know, couple hundred calories down to, you know, 100 calories, depending on if you're doing, you know, well, whole milk would even be more, but, you know, if you're looking at something like that and trying to go, if you can, to a skim milk, because that's going to be the lower fat version. And those are saturated fat.
Okay. Okay. Is there any protein shake, vitamin shake, nutrient shake, smoothie mix? Is there anything that's straight up good for you? Or is it only fresh fruit and vegetables?
If you were going to do a protein shake or a, you know, type of shake thing like that in the mornings or whatever it may be, I tell people to make sure that you are using fresh fruits and vegetables as much as you can. Adding protein to it. Don't just put, you know, if I were to, you know, say I'm going to make a smoothie every morning and I put bananas, strawberries, oranges, you know, all these fruits in there, and I have no protein, my blood sugar is going to be through the roof, and I may as well have just eaten a candy bar for all that matters. Obviously, we do get some, you know, of our vitamins and minerals from there as well, but having some protein along with that is definitely going to be helpful. In terms of a specific product that is best, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, we try and stay away from as many supplements as possible. So trying to make foods come first. So again, anytime you can make it like a whole food, plant-based lifestyle, all the better. So fresh fruits and vegetables, whole grains, that's going to be the best place to go. Adding in some flax seeds or some of that like cashew milk or whatever it may be for your protein, that's great too. Even peanut butter, stuff like that. But trying not to, go to, I could probably spend a whole other hour on some of the mixes and stuff that we could find in concoctions. And again, none of those are FDA approved. So any of your supplements, even if you're taking like a multivitamin, it's not FDA approved. So you don't necessarily know what you're getting in that pill or powder or whatever it is in that container. So they can say certain things on there, but we don't really know. So a lot of times I tell people you could just be flushing your money down the toilet and get the same effect. So we're not quite sure.
Okay, so you look at the calories, you look at your resting metabolic. Are you going to lose weight?
It's a fine balance between calories in versus calories out for weight gain and weight loss. So knowing where you are, and sometimes it can be a little bit of a juggle there as well to try and figure out, all right, this is the calorie recommendation that I should be following. And now how am I supposed to lose weight? Maybe it's going out for, a mile walk every day or doing some sort of exercise that you haven't been doing before. And that's going to give you that negative energy balance that will help increase, the calorie output so that you can lose weight if that's what your goal is. With that being said, more often than not, it's usually like an 80-20 rule of, nutrition is really where it's at. I'm still a group fitness instructor and personal trainer, so I'm not saying that exercise is not a big component because it's a huge component. And when we have more lean body mass, or meaning muscle, we do burn more calories in that resting state as well. So it's great to have more muscle mass on you as well, because you can essentially eat more and,
your body knows what to do with what you're eating.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because it sounds to me like your body doesn't know what to do. If you're inactive and you're eating fat, your body just doesn't know what to do with it.
Right. Yes.
Okay, I got one more question, then I got to get to Mayuri's question. How many glasses of water a day should I drink?
Again, there's recommendations for everybody. There is that whole 8 ounce rule. It's not a bad place to start from. Everybody's going to be different though, depending on their activity level. When it's really hot out, you need to drink more water. Even when it's really cold out, when you see your breath, that's still like condensation. That's still water that is leaving your body. So we do definitely need to, drink water in the winter as much as we do in the summer. A lot of times I'll tell people, if you find yourself putting chapstick on a lot, you might be dehydrated. Another thing I tell people a lot too is one of the first signs of hunger is actually dehydration.
Yes.
So making sure that you are staying hydrated. With that, one of the best things that you can do is look at your urine output. So when you wake up in the morning, it doesn't always have to be crystal clear, but if you have something that looks more on the side of lemonade versus apple juice, you're in a good spot. If you're looking like apple juice, a lot of times when you're going to the restroom, you're probably dehydrated. So you might want to, increase a little bit more water. Having a glass of water, if you're looking in terms of weight management, having a glass of water before meals can be helpful, can make you feel fuller. As opposed to some people don't like to drink while they're eating. So if you wait till afterwards, then you don't always have room to be drinking. So make sure that you are drinking fluids throughout the day.
Absolutely. Okay, so Mayuri wants to know about coconut oil and how you can incorporate that for weight loss.
Coconut oil is going to be one of our saturated fats, but it is also still one of the fats that a lot of people are utilizing in terms of cooking and things like that. So definitely the biggest part with that is just like olive oil or any of our oils, they are fats. We do need fats. We have A, D, E, and K are our fat soluble vitamins. So you do need fat in your body. You do need to be taking that in, regularly. The recommendation is 30%. no more than 30% of our calories coming from fats, and then no more than 10% being saturated fats. So there is a place for everything. Again, moderation is going to be key, and looking at portion sizes is definitely going to be helpful. So even though, people claim coconut oil, olive oil, certain oils are really good for you, again, there can always be too much of a good thing as well. So just making sure that we are kind of keeping in check, how much we're using when we're cooking or whatever it may be.
For sure. Indian food uses a lot of actual fresh coconut.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're talking about with the oil and the fresh. And I see what you're saying, though. You could just put it in that category and just follow the guidelines.
Right. Yep.
Got you. Is there what time of day do you stop eating?
It's going to vary for every, I know I keep saying that for every question, but it is going to vary for everybody. If you are looking in terms of weight loss, a lot of times if you can stop eating by dinner time, that's great. There are certain populations, whether they're diabetic or whether they have some sort of medical condition, that they really need to eat. Some people, even in hospital settings, will need to have a snack at 7 or 8 o'clock at night to help keep their blood sugar levels. So if you're on a specific medication, or if you have any chronic disease or anything like that, that can definitely play a huge role. But again, listen to your body and some of your body cues. So again, if you're food journaling and you want to add a little bit more information than just the foods that you're eating, maybe make that one of your things. Like, I'm not gonna, maybe in your head you're saying, I'm not gonna eat after 6:30 at night because that's when I'm done with dinner. So kitchen is closed and that's it. Well, maybe now I'm gonna start journaling how I feel at night. Maybe by 8 o'clock, my stomach's already growling because, maybe I didn't have a whole lot at dinner, or I didn't have, the right, amount of fiber, and, I'm hungry by that time. Or maybe I wake up throughout the night, or I wake up in the morning and I'm really crabby, just kind of looking at your mood and how food can affect your mood. And, some people do actually better by, eating a little bit later at night, just naturally, because some people are, night people versus some people are a morning person. So it can definitely change for each person.
Right. And I think it just depends on your bedtime and, all of the things that are going into, like, how long are you up after dinner? So, but
exactly. Yes. Like if I were to look at a college student and, one of them, is in bed at 10 o'clock every night because they're very regimented and they maybe play sports or whatever. And there's one that, stays up till 2 a.m. at the library. They might want to eat at midnight because they need that fuel, especially for their brain. It's not like they're, maybe they're not, out playing lacrosse or anything, but they still need that fuel for their brain as well. Your brain needs glucose as well. So it can definitely vary depending on what your activity level is and what time of day you're most active, for sure.
Okay. So awesome presentation. I have like 3 other programs I want you to do, but for sure, the one I really want you to do is the how to eat out at restaurants.
Oh, great. Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Don't you think? Like, I think that would be really helpful for people. Like the tip about putting the fork in the salad dressing first, genius. Yeah. I was like, yes, because you still get the salad dressing, but you don't get a big glob of it.
Yes.
You still get it. Though.
And a lot of times I've seen so many people hear oh, I've heard the tip of, put your dressing to the side. And then I'm like, well, how do you actually do it? Or I'll, be with somebody and I'll be like, all right, can we back this up a little second? Right now you're eating 4 pieces of lettuce because you're done with your dressing after that, because you're just dousing it. And, so kind of switching things up that way can definitely help. And there's lots of little tricks like that. So yeah, that'd be a great thing to do.
I know. I was like, oh boy. Okay. This is the last call for questions. Sandy Kurby, you're awesome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Connected with you. Anybody have any other questions? Feel free to unmute. Otherwise, we're going to call it and get on with our day. We drink some water. And
yeah, go have a healthy lunch. Get your fruits and vegetables in.
For sure. Yeah, she's. People are just saying thank you for your knowledge and blessings.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Thank you, Rudy, for coming. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I'm so glad.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
For sure. Have a great